introduce Tom Osborne. And forgive me for my cold today, but I promise you it's not contagious. I'm past that stage. It's probably the toughest assignment I've had since I've had this job. How do you introduce Tom Osborne? So I thought I'd tell a little something that even Tom doesn't know about, but we had a connection in the past. And that was that some of you know I had a daughter who was a cheerleader at Nebraska. And I know Tom is used to redshirt fifth-year people. I thought it was a 7-year red skirt. But she did finally graduate. But after Renee had graduated, she also worked for the university. And she was then also the mentor and an advisor to the Yale squad. And if you remember, a few years ago, there was a tragedy down there where one of the young ladies who was a cheerleader severely injured her neck and was paralyzed from the neck down, and doing much better today. But the reason for telling that is Renee was at the hospital, of course, because she, excuse me, she was the advisor at that time. And the first person who came to the hospital from the university administrative side in the athletic department was Tom Osborne for that cheerleader, to not only comfort the family, but also to comfort the rest of the Yale squad, as you can imagine how they felt at that time. So I tell you that story only that when Tom backs a program like he's going to talk to you about today, in teamwork and mentoring, that it is not done except out of the graciousness and the honesty of his house, his heart, that he supports such a program. And so it's very difficult for me to say I'd like to introduce Tom, a elect representative to the House of Representatives or an ex-coach, but to ask you to welcome Tom Osborne, a very gracious and sincere person who backs this program sincerely. Tom.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and we're really, really pleased that you give us a few minutes to talk to you, because we know your time is valuable. First of all, I'd like to introduce just a few people who are involved with teammates. First of all, my wife, Nancy, and maybe you can, if you want to applaud them, but do it after I, no. Wait till, I've got about 5 people to introduce. I'll introduce them all, and then you can applaud if you want. But Nancy has been very helpful in organizing teammates, been very supportive of a lot of things that I've done. Also, Tom Miller is in charge of the teammates program with Omaha Public Schools. Kristen Flott has been working with teammates in Greater Omaha. And then a couple guys that have really been very helpful to us up here. Danny Walker, who has done a lot of fundraising. John Shuley, who has done a lot of work with us and has been helping us in terms of our bookkeeping. So we really have some excellent people working with us. We have some other board members here this morning. But first of all, I see a little gray hair around the room. I've got a little bit myself. And when I got out of coaching, one of the things that I was really looking forward to was spend some time with my grandchildren. And I know a lot of you here probably have some grandchildren. And it's been a little harder than I thought it was going to be. The other day, my grandson came up to me and said, "Grandpa," he said, "make a noise like a frog." And I was kind of surprised, and I said, "Croak, croak." And he was happy enough. I thought it was a terrible imitation, but he was satisfied. And so pretty soon he was just turned 8. And I heard him talking to my granddaughter, his sister, who was 4, and he was telling her that it wouldn't be long before they'd be going to Disneyland. And I called him over and I said, "Well, what's this about going to Disneyland? I hadn't heard anything about it." He says, "Yeah." He said, "Mom always says when Grandpa croaks, we're going to go to Disneyland." So so I can see that I can tell a lot of you are grandparents out there. Well, just very quickly, I'll try to be fairly brief. And you say, well, what are you doing here? I think I can best explain that by relating a study that I ran across not too long ago. There was a study done in the Fullerton, California public schools in 1940, and they asked the teachers in the public schools in 1940 in California what their major concerns were, what were the problems that they were seeing. Number one problem was talking in class, number two was chewing gum, number three was not putting waste paper in a waste paper basket, number four was getting out of turn in line when they went from one class to another. So somebody noticed this more recently and decided they'd go back into the Fullerton, California public schools and ask the same question. So they did. They said, what are some of the main problems that you're seeing? And the problems had changed somewhat. The list was different. And so the number one concern was assault. Secondly was gangs. Third was drugs. Fourth was weapons, teenage suicide, dropout rates, teenage pregnancy, and so on and so on. And so you'd say, well, what in the world happened to us? You know, this 1940, if you're young, it seems like a long time ago. But if your age, some of us are here today, it doesn't seem so long ago. And it's a huge change in a period of 50, 60 years. And most of those changes actually have taken place in the last 25 to 30 years. And I guess they parallel some of the things that I saw in coaching, because over 36 years of coaching, I saw some drastic changes in the young people we were working with and the environments that they came from. And so I guess as I think about this, I would probably say that there are three things that have occurred to me that may have related to this transition, this change from what we saw in the Fullerton, California public schools in 1940 and what we're seeing today with some of our young people. And the first thing that has changed rather drastically and remarkably has been our family structure. When I first started recruiting back in the early 1960s, we would occasionally see someone from a single-parent family. And if so, it was usually because one parent or the other was deceased. But it wouldn't be over 5 or 10%. Today, over half of the young people that we went out and recruited were from single parents. Over 50% of the young people in our country today are growing up without both biological parents. And again, that change mostly has occurred in the last 25, 30 years. Currently, there are 18 million fatherless young people in our country. And I guess I dealt with some of those, and you know, in most cases, they never knew their dad, never saw him. And so if your dad doesn't care enough about you to stick around to even see what you look like, it leaves a hole in your life, it leaves somewhat of a vacuum in your psyche, and you're always trying to plug that hole with something, and usually it's the wrong stuff. And so I saw up close and personal firsthand what the family instability that we're experiencing in our country is doing to our young people. And then secondly, I think you realize that sometimes, even though you've done a great job as a parent, and even though the situation is about as good as it could be, when a young person gets to be around 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, they begin to think they're a little bit more independent, and they begin to pull away a little bit. By the time they're 15 or 16 or 17, they think they've got all the answers, and they think they're bulletproof, and they don't need anybody to give them any advice. And so somewhere in there between 11 and 16 or 17, the environment that young people are in becomes more and more important. And as parents and as grandparents, we begin to lose control. And so some things have happened in our environment, too, I think, that have made a difference. We're currently the most violent nation in the world for young people, between ages 14 to 24, in terms of homicide and suicide. And second place is not even close. So the violence factor has really escalated. And I guess I saw that rather graphically between 1985 and 1995. We had 7 players who at one time or another had been on our football team. They maybe were walk-ons, they might not have played much. But 7 players who had been there. And between 1985 and 1995, we had 7 players who were shot. 2 of them were shot fatally. You say, well, you must have gone out and recruited a bunch of thugs, didn't you? And the answer is no. None of these guys were armed. None of them were doing anything illegal. They were simply standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. And a remarkable thing about that was that prior to 1985, in the 23 years I'd been at Nebraska prior to 1985, I could not remember one case of any young person being the victim of a shooting incident. And so the violence factor has certainly escalated. I think most of you are concerned and aware of the fact that drugs and alcohol have become a bigger and bigger problem. And probably the major drug problem is one that maybe you're not as concerned about as you should be, because at the present time, 40% of our young people aged 13, 14, 15 are binge drinking. And when you start drinking alcohol and binge drinking at that age, it's a whole different ballgame because of psychological and physiological maturity. And so you find, statistically, that of that 40% will become alcoholics, and that's 16%. And oftentimes it happens very quickly. It doesn't take 3 and 4 and 5 years like it does when you're 25, 26, 27. Sometimes it just takes a matter of weeks. And of course you're all aware of methamphetamines, cocaine, crack, marijuana, and so on. And so the drug issue has really become huge. And then the third thing that I think has really impacted our young people that's out there in the environment is the issue of the media. I guess as a coach you always want to hit back at the media. I took my hits over the years, and I don't want to blame them for anything, but if you think about it, the average young person, by the time they're 21 years of age, has seen between 1 and 2 years, not of television, but by age 21 they've seen between 1 and 2 years of commercials. And so if you've seen between 1 and 2 years of commercials on television, it's obviously made some impact on your value system. And so if you watch the commercials and you watch the ads and you listen to some of the music and you watch some of the movies, you realize that there are certain messages that keep coming through. And one of the messages that I think our young people are getting consistently is the idea that things will make you happy. You know, when you're a young guy or a young girl, certain kind of tennis shoes, certain kind of jacket, certain kind of bicycle. If you can just have that, you know, then you'll be satisfied. Then you get a little bit older, and it's a certain kind of car, and a certain kind of clothes. And you get a little older, and it's a certain kind of job, and it's a certain kind of house, and a certain kind of income, and a certain kind of security, and you can plug in all the gaps. But the point is that we're steadily telling our young people that things will make you happy. And I guess most of us in this room have lived long enough to realize that's not true. It's really a deception. Things really don't make you happy. Secondly, I think young people are being taught consistently that promiscuity is acceptable, it's common, and nobody gets hurt. And so roughly 95% of the events that you see on television, movies, and so on that have to do with sex, 95% are extramarital. And so promiscuity is held up as something that really is harmless. And yet I guess as I sat across the desk from young men over 36 years and dealt with some of their problems, I came to realize that promiscuity always diminishes, but there are consequences, and an awful lot of the time the consequences are irreversible. And so again, I think our young people are being deceived. And of course, we talked about the alcohol, we talked about the violence, and so the messages that our young people are receiving really have been very damaging. And so I don't want to make you just feel terrible. By now you probably say, well, I wish this guy had never come. You know, I'm feeling awful about things. But the reason I'm mentioning these things to you is that unless you work in the schools, unless you have first-hand acquaintance with fairly large numbers of young people, the average person our age doesn't really have a full grasp of what's going on, or how serious it is. And so what I'm trying to do is outline the problem for you. And so you say, well, that's great, but what are you going to do about it? And I guess in coaching, that was what I was always interested in. I wasn't too interested in people to tell me what was wrong, so I had a whole lot of folks tell me what was wrong. But I was more interested in finding somebody who would tell me what we're going to do about it, you know. And so one thing that will work is mentoring. And this is what I want to spend the next 5 minutes talking to you about. mentoring is something that we have found is a solution, and there are some numbers to go with it. Character Counts has done some studies, and they found that a good mentoring program will cut down absenteeism from school and dropout rates by close to 50%. Will cut drug and alcohol abuse by 40 to 50%, teenage pregnancy by about 40%, and violence and crime by 30 to 40%. And there's nothing else that we know of, given the present situation, given the situation we have in front of us, that is anywhere near as effective. And so we have found that mentoring is critical. And you may say, well, what is mentoring? And I think, probably to me at least, mentoring represents three things. One is affirmation. You'd be amazed at how many young people we have, and maybe even some of the kids that you deal with, maybe your grandchildren, maybe others that you know, really don't have anyone who says, you know, I really believe in you. You know, I really care about you. You know, you're okay. And so the messages that they get one way or another at school, at home, really are not affirming at all. And so when you don't have affirmation, things begin to go downhill very quickly. And I guess I saw this very, very clearly in our situation with our football team. If you told a player often enough that he wasn't going to be very good, that you didn't think he had talent to play, that you just didn't think he was going to work out, it wouldn't be long before he would play down to that level of expectation. And it wouldn't be long before he would play so poorly, he would usually be demoted or leave the team. And on the other hand, if you said, you know, I really believe in you, you know, I really see some great possibilities here. We think that down the road, you're going to be a great player. You have great potential. It wouldn't be long before they would begin to take that affirmation and they would run with it, and they become players that they didn't even know they could become. And so affirmation, I don't care at what level, what age, is critical. You need to be affirmed. And most of our young people, at least a high percentage, are not being affirmed on a regular basis. Secondly, an awful lot of our young people don't have an anchor in their life. They do not have an adult or more than one adult who they can count on. That when that adult tells them something, that they're going to visit school, they're going to attend an athletic event, that they're going to give them a birthday present, they will follow through. You know, so often they're disappointed. So often they're let down. And so a mentor is someone who is stable, someone who you can count on, who says, I'm going to be there, and I don't have any axe to grind. You know, I'm not a parent, I'm not a grandparent, I'm not a teacher, I'm not a preacher. There's nothing in it for me, but I care enough about you that I'm going to show up, and I'm going to be there every week or twice a week or whatever the deal is, and I will not let you down. And that's a very powerful thing in the life of a young person, because many of them have never experienced that before in their lifetime. Let me just tell you a very quick story about a case like this. Out in North Platte, there was a mentor and a mentee, and the mentor wasn't seemingly getting through to the young person he was mentoring. The young guy just came in there and sat, and the guy would talk, and he would ask him questions, and he wouldn't get much response. And this went on week after week and month after month. And finally the mentor thought, well, you know, maybe there's something I can do that will help. The mentor played a guitar. And so he said, how would you like to take some guitar lessons? And the young guy said, okay. And he said, I'd like to do that. So he began to learn to play the guitar a little bit. And then the mentor said, you know what, if you get your grades up, I'll give you this guitar. And so the guy began to do a little bit better. And the guy gave him the guitar. And then some time went by, and then the guy's grades went down again, and finally the mentor said, well, you know, the deal was that you're going to, in order to earn this guitar, you're going to have to make your grade, so I'm going to have to take it back. And he said, and furthermore, you know, we've been together now for about a year, and nothing much has happened, and I really don't think I can reach you. I don't think as a mentor I'm doing you any good. And so I think that probably what we need to do is see if somebody else can do a better job. So the young guy didn't say much. He just gave the guitar back, and the guy took the guitar home, put it in the closet, and didn't see the guy for a couple of weeks, and then he thought, well, I'm getting the guitar out and play it. He got it out, and when he opened it up, the note fell out. And He opened it up, read it, and the note said, "Don't give up on me." So the point is that the young guy, even though nothing much seemed to be happening, had really appreciated the fact that here was someone who was constant. Here was someone who would show up. Here was someone who cared enough, even though there weren't a lot of sparks flying and there wasn't a whole lot going on in the relationship. It was very meaningful to that young person. And so the guy went back and he reestablished that relationship, and then things began to happen. And then the third thing I'd say that a mentor is someone who has some vision. Because an awful lot of our young kids, if you think about it, have never seen anybody maybe that gets up and goes to work every day. Have never seen a father figure. Don't know anybody who went to college. And so their idea of the future is waiting until they're 16 when they can drop out of school and they get a job at Burger King and McDonald's and make minimum wage, maybe buy an old car, and that's what life is all about. And so if you have somebody can say, you know, I think you can do better than that. I see some potential. I see some things that you could be. And right now you don't even know maybe what those are. And so I got a guy that I've been mentoring now for 4 years. And this young guy is from a very large family. Had a brother in prison, father died, stepfather died. And so his vision of maybe the best he could do is maybe drop out of school at age 16. And so he didn't go to school much. He got kicked out of school. He got kicked out of another school. But finally somebody came to me and said, I don't think this is working. I think they were politely trying to tell me I wasn't a very good mentor. And they said, we'll get you somebody else. And I said, no, you know, I made a commitment to this particular guy. And I'm going to stay with him until he tells me he doesn't want to see me anymore or until I die. And so we stuck together. And along about the 2.5, 3-year mark, something began to change. I don't know what it was, but he didn't get kicked out of any more schools. And his grades were not great, but he began to pass some classes, and that was great. And he began to participate in athletics. And he turned the corner. And I would say today that he's got a future. You know, I think he's going to be a Division I football player. I didn't know he could play football at all. I think he's going to be okay. And so the point is that you have to provide some vision. And then lastly, let me just say this. We're talking about teammates, which is one of many mentoring programs. And all we're doing is we're saying, okay, maybe you folks have got some ability. You know, you don't get to where you are, being retired from AT&T, Intel, without some talent. And so you've got something upstairs. You've got something going for you. And you also maybe have some time, and maybe you have some ability to make a contribution. And so what I would encourage you to do is think about this, because you know you can give some money to an organization, and you can build a building, and you can start a program, and all those things are great. But eventually, every one of those buildings will fall down, and those programs will disappear. But if you invest in the life of a young person, and you begin to make some changes in that young person then will become a different person, and that young person will begin to invest in somebody else. And so you begin to start something that will have a ring of immortality to it. There's no greater investment that you can make in a young person. So our mentoring program is 1 hour a week in the schools. Most anybody can spare 1 hour a week. And most all of you wring your hands and shake your head once in a while what you read in the papers about young people. And the question is, you know, what are we willing to do about it? You know, what are we willing to sacrifice? And so currently we're mentoring about 500 young people in Omaha, about 750 in Lincoln, roughly 2,000 to 2,500 around the state of Nebraska, and roughly 30, 35 school districts. And we'd like to take that to 60 school districts and 5,000 young people. We should be able to mentor close to 2,000 people in Omaha alone to make a dent. And if you do that, things will begin to change, and things will begin to happen. And so We do have some material, and if you'd like to follow through with a phone call, we really appreciate that. And if you want to mentor in the Omaha Public Schools, you'll probably end up talking to Tom Miller. Probably talk to Kristen if you want to, in the greater Omaha area, Millard, Papillion, Bellevue, wherever. So wherever you live, we got a school near you. And we will do the very best we can for you. And it's a program that will make a difference. So my time is up. I really want to thank you very much for taking the time to listen today. We hope we have 200, 300, 400, maybe 500 mentors come out of this group. There's 1,600, 1,700 of you here. And if you did, that would make a huge impact in the Omaha area. So thank you for your attention, and I want to wish you the very best. Thank you.
I have a little gift for Tom here from Avaya, so he won't forget us.
Probably have, but on behalf of Avaya Communications, we'd like to present this nice travel bag for you, Tom, as well as a wonderful Avaya Communications cap. Wear it with pride.
Well, thank you. I'm gonna wear the cap and take this briefcase back to Washington, and I'm gonna give it to the new president, whoever he is.
I'd like to personally introduce you to, I know a lot of you have seen Kathy walking around here, but Kathy is the new liaison for the company and for pioneering as well, and I'd like to personally introduce her as Kathy Playset. Here she is.
Now we're getting to the good part, though. We're going to have the drawing from the teammates, and Mo, you can bring that up here, and we can pull some names out. Tom's going to come out.
His father had been a photographer, so Bud decided to try an old 5x7 view camera, an old heavy wooden tripod, and lights from Sears and Roebuck. And he started photography. And he did what some of us younger guys only heard about in the movie Easy Money, kidnapping. He'd go to small towns and he'd drive around looking for diapers, tricycles, anything that signified there's a kid living here, knock on the door and say, hey, I can take some photographs for you. $1.95. And in those days, his average was $10 a sitting. And that was pretty good. In '59, he opened a studio at the Countryside Village, where he's at now. And the rest, I think most of us know. He built the studio into Wyckoff Place. People all over Omaha know about it. I have a little story that really doesn't have anything to do with Bud's career in photography, but it does tell a lot about Bud as a person. Some of you might know this, and it's kind of an interesting story. Years ago, our friend Ed Arnold had traveled to Mexico, and he talked to Bud and Donald both. And he talked them into going down to Mexico. He said, you know, the people down there, the Mexican people are so warm, you're just going to love it. So he started studying Spanish and headed off for Mexico. And by the time they got off the bus, they were in a little village, and they met a group of young children who were selling gum and candy on the street. And Bud took their photograph. And when he returned to Omaha, he sent this photograph back to these kids that he met. And months later, he went back to Mexico and went to the same village, and he looked up these kids again. A friendship kind of developed, and he photographed these kids individually. And when he came back, he sent them these pictures. But when Bud came back, he was contacted by one of the kids, and it seems that this young boy's father had just died, and he left this 14-year-old boy kind of wondering what he was going to do. He wanted to be a doctor. And he called Bud for some advice. What should he do? So he said, should I stay in school? What should I do? Bud said, stay in school, definitely. In fact, why don't you come up to the United States and learn English up here and study and go to school up here. And with his mother's support, this young guy came to the United States, and after he'd been here for a few months, it was pretty obvious to both of them that this was a relationship that was really blooming into a father-son type relationship. So Bud asked him, "You think your mother would allow you to stay a little longer, maybe graduate from high school?" And contacted, and mother said, "That'd be fine." With her support, he stayed. After the young man's 18th birthday, Bud officially adopted him. In fact, had to go through some personal bills through Congress in order to do this. The young man is his son, Steve Reese, who we all know has gone on to become a very successful photographer in his own right. And another of the younger children also joined Bud and Steve in Omaha, and that's Steve's brother Jim, who also works full-time in the studio. A few of Bud's accomplishments, besides raising 2 boys. He, again, Bud, this isn't meant to be all-inclusive. He has been president of the Professional Photographers of Nebraska in 1970. One of, again, early charter members of the PPGO. He earned the National Award for Service to Professional Photography in 1982 from the PPGO. He earned the Photographer of the Year Award, the Alvin Lewis Memorial Award in 76, 78, and 79. The Best Portrait Photograph in 79 for the state. Top Wedding Album in 78 and 81. The Jack White Memorial Best Photograph Print Show in 76. The Photographer of the Year in the Masters Exhibit in 82. And Bud has earned over 192 merits from the national organization in print competition, speaking again. Bud's taught photography seminars around the country, and he still is active in the portrait studio. In fact, the very first photography seminar I ever took was from Bud Reese. I think it was the first PPGO meeting I ever showed up at. Rick Billings here cornered me and dragged me to a meeting, and Bud cornered me in the back of the room and said, "Hey, what do you know?" And all of a sudden I found, here's this guy, I'd looked at his ads all my life. I said, "Who is this guy?" And he's talking to me, and he invited me to a seminar, and I came away from this seminar just awestruck by the photography and by the guy. Here's a guy who would talk to me that was one of the pros of town, and that really impressed me. He's not just an outstanding artistic photographer, he's also a businessman. In fact, he was just a week or 2 ago featured in the Omaha Midlands magazine with his campaign for advertising. And we've all watched his advertisements. They're really interesting. We're really fortunate to have Bud here tonight to receive his lifetime membership, and I would like to present Mr. Mervyn Bud Reese. If you come forward, Bud.
As I try to get my hand on it before I say it.
There you go. I'd like to present you with a lifetime membership to PPGO, and I hope this brings you around forever.
Thank you. I do have to set the record straight, though, because the real story is that I met this little guy in Mexico, and I find very few people that have ever heard this story about the camel and the camel driver. Is there anybody here that's ever heard that story, the camel and camel driver? I'll just give you a quickie on it. The camel and camel driver is not a bad story, really. It's kind of bad for the camel driver, however. But basically, what is it? It's one of these little stories that has a moral. Basically, what happened is this kind-hearted camel driver acquired this new camel, and he started on the desert. And the camel was pretty smart, and he, when it was real cold outside the tent where he's tied up, he nudged the tent and asked the camel driver, he said, "You're such a kind-hearted man. I just know that you'll allow me to just stick the very tip of my nose in your tent. It's so cold out here." And he said, "Sure, go ahead, put your nose in the tent." Well, the story ends up that the camel, you know, little by little, you want his ears in, and each time the camel driver says, "Oh, of course, that's not much." Until pretty soon the camel driver is outside the tent, and the camel's inside. Well, this is what happened. This is a true story. Steve said, "Oh, if I could just see your studio." Now he owns the damn thing. I gotta just tell you what quickie though, because you know, I always hated the name Mervyn. I just hated it when the teacher would say, "Mervyn, go to the cloakroom." And I think I was a good kid. I wasn't a troublemaker. You guys know that. And I've never changed. At any rate, and so I always wanted to have the name of Bud. And now that I've spent a fortune trying to market Mervyn, I thought you all call me Mervyn. Especially in public. Thank you very much.
Okay, now for the real important person. Our speaker tonight, Mr. Michael Meuret from Norfolk, Nebraska, has owned Michael's Photography for 10 years. He's a heck of a nice guy. I think many of you here know him already personally and recognize what a fine individual he is. And we hope that tonight he's going to show us a quick video. Mike?
Joe, you didn't tell me that the night I had to speak, all these important people were going to be here.
And it didn't look great on your resume. You're on the same platform with Bud, Mervyn Reese, Don Jack, and you were the headline.
Every good program has a joke. And so about 9:45, if I have enough courage, I'm going to tell you one. Just a little bio. In June, it'll be 10 years since I started my studio. I was 22 at the time, and I didn't know anybody in town, except my grandfather. And moved to Norfolk, that's about 40 miles from where I grew up. I always wanted to be a photographer. I always wanted to have a photography studio in Norfolk. Don't ask me why. It's just one of those things you just kind of want inside. And through the support of my family and a little education, I was able to do it. Currently, I have a staff of between 4 and 7, depending on the time of year. And I do all the photography myself, almost, 99.5%. I do about 300 seniors, 350. I don't have a computer in my studio like a lot of you do, so don't ask me what my average is. Don't ask me exactly how many I do. I can tell you pretty close, and but that's as good as I can do. And do about 25 weddings, and lots of children, and several of other things. It's kind of a general purpose studio. And what I'm going to talk about tonight is what I call additive lighting, and that's not a real exciting title, but it's kind of descriptive because it's the opposite of subtractive lighting. So that's how I come up with the name. I tried subtractive and I didn't like it, and I did the opposite, so I called it additive. So that's what we've got. It's something I didn't find that a lot of people around here were doing. It was a good tool for me to increase my skill and open my mind a little bit to what I learned first about photography. So it's not something that all of you are going to go home and try. It's not going to fit into every one of your philosophies or everyday work. But it's an extra tool you may be able to use from time to time. Some of you will use it to a higher degree than others. I did have some notes in case I got lost. I didn't think I'd ask you into it, but there's my talk. Intro. I think I did the intro. First, I'm just going to show about 20 slides real quick. All of these use what I call additive lighting. Basically, it's you've heard of synchro sunlight. This is both synchro sunlight and synchro shade, if you will. It's learning to mix. Is that a word? It's learning to mix electronic flash with natural light. So I'm just going to rip through real quickly, about 20 of them or so, and then we have some side-by-side slides, and I'll explain a little bit more. So go ahead and hit the lights if you want to, whoever's going to do that. You're on the way. I got my leash, I can't go very far. Maybe I'll just do that.
He's getting them.
I'm understanding.
Oh, okay.
All of these are using electronic flash. Please don't be too careful.
Are you using the light modifier at all?
Yeah. Some of them is more obvious than others. The reflection is the sun on the one on the right. And the shadows on purpose. Kind of Joe Johnson style.
I think so.
All mistakes are on purpose, aren't they? The one on the left is one of my favorites. I didn't have his head quite placed where I needed it to, but it shows you some of the things you can do with electronic flights outdoors. But you need to be a little shorter. Some of these are mistakes, and I'll direct your attention to the one on the left. The shadow of her hand is very, very bad. And sometimes you learn more by looking at mistakes than you do at looking at what worked. Can you hear me in the back?
Yeah.
Go ahead and turn the lights on. Not all those obviously are going to be big sellers, but they're just kind of show you a sampling of how I use. I learned portraiture at a Donald Jack seminar, so it's appropriate, Don, that you're here, or that I'm here when you're here. And I also work for Dave Raymond in Carnegie. Some of you have been in business a while remember Dave. And when I learned to do outdoor portraiture, we learned to do it kind of the old, I call the old classic way. With simply natural light, and to look for holes in the sky to create a nice directional light pattern so you can create modeling in the face. Same as we do in the studio. And after working in the field for a few years, I found out that those situations are not always perfect, that I had to work in. And some of your heads are nodding, so you know what I'm talking about. There are places and there are times of day where you have beautiful, natural, directional light with a nice dark background and no hot spots, to do classical outdoor portraiture. And however, the location I use, that happens from 7 in the morning till about 7:45. And then it's slowly starts to deteriorate until about 9:30, and it's just it's full sunlight. And I just can't, I didn't feel I could make a living only doing outdoor portraiture for 45 minutes in the morning, or even for an hour, hour and a half. I wanted to do a couple, 300 seniors, and to do that I needed to find a way to, I guess, to utilize the sunlight, you might say, to improve my photography. I also got kind of frustrated because on vacation you see amateurs, they take their camera out in the sunlight, they take a picture, right? And I'm a professional and I didn't know how to do that. I was afraid of the sunlight. When the sun came up, I ran. And for years, 3 or 4 years, I would tell people, I'm sorry, I can't make your portrait because the sun is out. And they kind of go, oh. They didn't understand. And that made sense to me at the time. But after a couple of years, I thought, I'm a professional, but I don't know how to I don't know how to handle light. I didn't know what to do with it. And so I challenged myself to do something. And so I've been going to seminars throughout the 10 years, and so I picked up little things, but I hadn't used them. And so I kind of went the whole gamut of different ways of manipulating light. Reflectors and umbrellas and subtracting lighting and lots of different things outside. And I finally settled on to what I call additive lighting. Very simply, taking an electronic flash, I don't care what brand that you might use. I use the Lumidyne, it's the only one I've really ever tried seriously. There are probably others out there. They won't let me sell these, so you can buy whatever you want. But it works very, very well for me. And it's simply taking a lighting situation that does not have directional light. Open shade, cloudy day, a wedding altar area that just, the only directional light might be spotlights from straight above. We've all had this situation, haven't we? Where if there were not directional light, then what we want to do is to add a layer of directional light. And I use that with electronic flash. Very simply put, that's all I do. Metering gets to be real interesting. You get pretty good at metering ambient light versus electronic flash and doing the ratio thing. It takes a little experimentation. Very simply, that's what I do. And I'm lost, so I'm looking at this sheet right here. Oh, I'm okay. I also found that on windy days I had trouble outdoors. So I'd go farther back into the trees, and pretty soon I was back so far, I lost my nice directional light. Even if it were there out where I like to shoot, the wind was so bad, I had to go back in, then that wouldn't work at all. And there were some portraits I wanted to make in the sunlight. Seniors with their cars, seniors with their water skis, and things that probably should be done in the sunlight. I mean, that's where they use them, that's where they have them. They're naturally used to seeing them in a sunlight situation, and I wanted to be able to do that. Okay, so I started with a reflector. And, oh, I got to tell you one other thing that really made me do it. One of my competitors went out and took a beach picture one year, back in about, I don't know, it was 84 or 5, I suppose. And it was good. And the kids liked it. And I liked it. Of course, I couldn't shoot on the sandbar because she did it on a cloudy day, but she put it in a brochure and everybody liked it. And they were asking for it. That year, the river changed channel. I shoot out by the river, Elkhorn River, and left me a 300-foot sand beach. So I had customers that wanted it. I had a beautiful 300-foot sand beach just by the grace of God that just appeared. Okay, so I forced myself to learn how to do that. So I started with reflectors. I tried to take them out in the sun and reflect that light back into their eyes. Ever try that? They can't see. It's just blinding. And so I knew I had to have some kind of electronic flash. And so before I spent money on one of these, I took a Vivitar and I don't know, taped it or something around the stand, and I took it out with an umbrella. Well, that umbrella lasted 4 times it was blown down in about 2 minutes. In Nebraska, that just doesn't work. So I made little homemade sandbags. So I thought, oh, a little sandbag in the light thing, right? My back was so sore. I mean, I could, after 100 yards, I just couldn't carry the thing around. So, I mean, I think I tried almost everything. So then I went to, I think I threw away the umbrella, and I threw away the sandbags, and I went to a bare bowl because Don Blair used a bare bowl, and he's kind of important, and he lost all his hair, but he has a lot of money. And he's very successful. So one of those, he did right. So I tried a bare bowl. And that was not too bad. It gave you a nice fill in, but the shadows were way too much. Okay? And all this time I was learning how to mix the sunlight with the light that was already there. So I didn't like the bare bowl, but I used it probably for a year. Okay. Then I went to a reflector. Right here. This is the one. That didn't work too bad. It was lightweight. It didn't blow over in the wind. Didn't take an assistant. I could place a light. It would stay most of the time. And it's pretty rugged. When it blew over, it went right back to work. And if I wanted a bare bulb, I could just take it off. It was very, very efficient. I can throw a light way past where Bud's sitting over there and it'd be effective. And it was battery powered, rechargeable batteries. So it was pretty good. It took me, I suppose, 3 years to get to the point where I am now. Is this making any sense?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Maybe I should stop and see if there's any questions before.
Yeah, Mike, you were talking about metering for ambient light. Now, do you just go by distance, or do you actually meter the flash meter with that?
I found that with the Lumidyne, but it's very, very, very accurate. I also do a lot of double checking metering. I also, to be honest, do a lot of guessing, and I did a lot of bracketing for about 3 years. And I still do. If I'm a little bit unsure, I'll bracket.
Do you feel that's still necessary?
To bracket?
Yeah. Because you probably have a good feeling after all this time.
The locations that I'm used to, I don't bracket very much.
Incidentally, I would like to compliment you on that photography. I think it's excellent. Very nice technique.
Thank you.
Also, are you using, for the most part, you know, the thing that's interesting to me is I want to know, is this going to be something that's most of us will do things if they're workable for us, and the easier it is, the more we're apt to do. But if you have, if you have a lot of lights to worry about, probably you won't do it. Now, you, for the most part, on those photographs you showed us, was that one light, or do you use more than one light? One light.
The Meuret.
I do use an assistant.
Meuret. PPGO.
However, that's really not necessary for this process. I just find it faster and better with
It's a cardboard box.
female assistant, and she's very. I don't know what I do without her.
Now, you might have mentioned this, but I think it'd be helpful to give us some kind of a lighting diagram if you can, even if you just describe it. In other words, I I don't know if I'm asking questions that are not important to the rest of people, but I'm really impressed with this, and I'd like to know more about how I've noticed it looked like some are pretty much just flat on, or especially some of those backlight ones, which are very nice. Do you usually use that technique, or tell me?
Excellent slides or comparison slides, but the same picture with and without. I picked ones where the light didn't go off on one, and I had about 15 or so of those.
Good.
So I think
Of course, that's over 50 years' work, right? Right. Don't let them laugh at you like that. They'll eat you up when you're new.
I know. Half the board left before I even started. Supposed to be my friend. Let's see. Any other questions? Most of these I think I'm going to cover. Anything else? Yeah.
Is this your final lighting? Is what you have here?
No. I couldn't find my diffuser that I use because I haven't used it since October, and I frantically looked last night and I couldn't find it. It's a little one of those PhotoFlex white diffuser materials. You know, you do this and it becomes about a fourth the size. You know what I'm talking about? What I found was, Denny, that this was too small a light source for my lights. I wanted. You can't take a softbox outside. They dumb things blow over. Unless you have an assistant there. Oh, I'm sorry, I just scratch you. And you can't really take an umbrella. I would love to be able to use an umbrella outside. This year I'm going to start. But for the most part, it's just a flat thing. And when I say Donna diffuse, she goes, Vic. She puts it about this far in front of the light. Takes out one stop of light, but it creates as close as I can a softbox effect. It takes the edge off. And I think you'll see in the slides, I think I can show you when I use it. So, if any of you can tell me a better way, I would love it. But we have to have a way where this thing doesn't blow down. It's lightweight, it's easy, it's quick, and it looks good.
Are you going to show us some with bare bulb too?
Probably not. I haven't really used bare bulb very much.
Okay.
For a couple of years.
Why didn't you? Can you just tell us why you changed from the bare bulb?
I just thought the shadow was way too sharp for one temperature. I needed to soften it, so I went to this a little bit. Plus the fact with bare bulb, if I wasn't just awfully careful, I got flare into the lens, and it wasn't very efficient. Sometimes I need to shoot it 11 or 16 outside, and I want that efficiency. So one thing you'll find if you do this, you're not always shooting it wide open like I used to when I first went.
Why?
Why? Just to balance, especially if you're shooting in sunlight, then you just can't. You need about 2,000 shutter speed.
With this system, generally, you mentioned that you used to shoot, or would like to shoot from 7 to quarter to 8. What time do you like to shoot now?
Well, we start at 8 and we go till 10:15, and I do 2 seniors at a time every 45 minutes. My location's about 4 miles out, so they just meet us out there. They've done that for years. They have maps printed up, and at the consultation, they just know where to go.
Mike, what about using the other senior? If you're doing 2 seniors, why couldn't you have the 1 senior just?
They're changing clothes, but
oh, I see. You watch? No. Sorry. Unless it's there to have the Donald Jack. I don't know what got into me. I'm sorry. I knew whatever I did with that
new dressing room.
Before I take any more questions, I think I'll go. Let me go on a little bit because some of these I just may cover naturally. Let's see where am I? Flare of light and then that. Okay, sunlight usage. You know.
Well, there's just one question that I have. Now, I've watched Donald Jack give programs. The last one, he used about 30 or so sheets of 8.5 by 11 paper for his notes. Is your entire program on that little piece of paper?
See, I never know if I get off.
Raider, that just goes to show you who the professional is.
A lot of us use the spotlights indoor now, like the Vinyl Spot or the Tri-Light. How many of you use those? How many of you like those? Okay. I like it. I use it. And so I found that I can do the same thing outside, just with a very specular small light source. I think I thought someone was crazy if they'd shown me these pictures 10 years ago. I said, you can't do that. That's not an outdoor portrait. sun is hitting the background, sun is hitting the subject. And yet, look at the Spiegel catalog, and they do that. Fashion photography, they know how to mix sunlight and flash, so I can't leave. So that's what we do. Now, what do I do when the light's perfect? Shut it off. If I have beautiful natural light, I mean, there is almost nothing beautiful, almost nothing. I mean, that is really neat. And so, don't use it. This is not something you use on every picture. But, you've got a family of 12 people and you don't have directional light, I just dare you to put up a subtractive lighting thing. Just take those black scrims out and try it. It's just awesome. Oh yeah, subtractive. I was going to tell you about that too. I tried subtractive. You know, I bought the big black panels, one like this and one like this, and then you try to hook them up. When you do that, you take enough, I should say you, when I did that, I took enough light away from that area where the subject was. I had to open up my f-stop to settings. What's that do to your background? Lightens it 20%. And I didn't like that. So, plus my gosh, trying to work with any speed at all, is, you know, every pose you have to move your, and the wind's a problem too. So that's kind of out of frustration of all the things that didn't work is how I came onto this. And one day, Keith's not here, but I wish you could hear this. One day I called my friend Keith out because I said, Keith, this is really strange, but I'm doing something that's got to be wrong. I did it for about a year and a half, and I said, the only people I know that are doing this are Donald Blair and there's somebody else that are on the national circuit. I said, tell me what I'm doing wrong. I don't want to do portraiture wrong, and I want to make a living in this business. The only two people he knew were doing were Donald Blair, I don't know, somebody else. So either it's something that could be a coming trend, or we just don't know any better. But I found that it's enabled me to work at times of the day. I can do an outdoor senior at 2 o'clock now. I don't always like to, but I can. And I'm not afraid to handle the situation. Okay. So you can get off if you have notes.
Michael, does that make a difference, in your opinion, as far as the color of the eyes, working in the middle of the day like that, all that light?
I don't normally work in the middle of the day. Our outdoor is scheduled, but on occasion, if I have to, I guess I haven't noticed any difference.
You should be better color in the middle of the day, actually. I just wonder if you notice what you do or not.
In the eye itself? What this will do is it will sharpen the faces, it will whiten the whites of the eye, it will warm up the shadows because it's 5,500 degree Kelvin, and often with a blue sky it's like 7,000. So it will warm up your subject. It just makes them pop out a little bit in the background. If you overuse it, and I've got some in here where it's overused, it looks awful. It's like salt. You just have to be very careful.
There's one last little comment. You get pretty good highlights in the eyes too, don't you? This film like
you get with outdoor portraiture. Oftentimes the catch lights are indistinct. And what you see for a catch light, how many of you have to draw on catch lights outside? This does give you a catch light, which is small, and we like to enlarge ours a little bit. But it's nice and white and it's very distinct. And it cleans up the whites. It also helps on retouching a little bit. But also, there's some bad things about it too, and I'll show you those as we go along. It's not a fancy. Okay. Why don't we go to the next set of slides? They're kind of comparison. Tell Monty to wave at me when it was 10 o'clock because I don't want to keep you too late. We started a little later than we were supposed to.
How do you trigger it? How do you trigger it?
How do I trigger it? The first year I just used an extension cord from Kmart, 99 cents. But then I bought a radio slave, which is what I use now. And it's pretty handy. If everything works. Okay, the one on the left is without. The one on the right is with. See what it does? In the studio, we wouldn't light people like we do on the left. But outdoors, I found I was settling for that kind of lighting and just accepting it as portraiture. And yet we wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that in the studio. And try to pass it off.
What's the distance from the light source? And what's in front of it? Is this
This would be this luminine you see with the with the little diffuser. And you can use anything, any little sheet of white diffused.
Now this looks like there isn't a lot of bright sunshine at that time. I'm looking all the way back. It looks like there might be sun on that open area in the middle.
Yeah, this is pretty good shade, but this is either on a cloudy day or early in the morning. And it got a nice background except for one little spot. But actually, the light is all from overhead. It's still not good lighting. So we try to do about 6 to 8 poses of each senior, and I do 2 at a time. And to find a spot that's perfect for every picture, I just couldn't do it.
And you do let them change clothes out there? Mm-hmm. Do you think is that practical?
Oh yeah,
Do you think it's necessary? I should ask.
They like it. You just tell them dressing room number 1 is to the east, and dressing room number 2 is to the west. And they don't. It took me 6 years before they talked me into letting them do it because I thought this is not right. But they don't care. They'll go in the bushes, and most of them bring a friend.
Does that add to the setting time?
No, that's why I do 2 at a time. Because I can be photographing, and you know, they won't hurry so much changing, and they'll take a little more care with their hair and so forth if they don't feel like you're waiting on it, or feel like I'm waiting on it. Without on the left, with on the right.
Yes.
Do I like the sunlight? No. Does it sell? Yeah.
She's got a perfect.
Well, she's dead. I try to get a loop light. When I first started, I tried to do a Rembrandt, but that just until I've got unless I have a really large broad light source, I just didn't like that no shadow very much. It bothered me, and it'll show up on some of these. See how the whites of the eyes come out?
Now this light is just off your camera then?
This light is at about wouldn't be 45. I suppose about a 30-degree angle off axis.
And how far away? What's the distance from the subject?
6 to 8 feet. Although I can, some of these is farther if they're in the river.
And your camera is about the same distance or further? What lens are you using for this?
180 on an RV.
So then you'll be 25, 30 feet, so your light's in front of the camera, isn't it?
Oh, very often. That's why bare bulb caused me some consternation. Now, I'm not afraid to work in the sunlight and mix a little bit. This very typically could have been at f8 at about 125. That looks about, the highlights look about that.
The amazing thing is I don't see any effect except on the face. And that's incredible.
Well, there's some coming up. See the sunflowers shadow on her leg?
Oh yeah.
See?
It's in both of them.
Yeah, it's in both of them.
I wouldn't assume the sunset.
That could have been the luminine went off on the one on the left, but that could have been one I bracketed out. I don't remember this one. A wedding altar. This is just to show how it will actually correct the color to daylight film. This was taken before 400 film came out, so we don't have quite the orange problem like 10 years ago, I done the one on the left and thought that was a good wedding picture. And yet the one on the right, I think. It's kind of amazing. You just look at the eyes and there's something about it.
You using the modeling light on there, Mike?
Not outside, it doesn't do anything.
Just pointing it. And
yeah, point and shoot. It's pretty easy to train an assistant, you know, to look for the angle of the face. Just to put it right there. It's horizontal and goes back. Now that one's probably about 10. That's probably about the last picture I took that day. We got a lot of sun.
live.
All right, sorry about that. This is a mini park I built behind my studio. The only way I could do it with city code was to build 10-foot walls, and so it's very direction light from straight above. And I built this the same year that my competitor took the beach picture, so it all happened about the same time. I needed some way to light these subjects. So I can use an umbrella inside this building, because there's no wind in there, but I don't always.
Michael,
Yes?
you think it's in good taste, though, having somebody on their back like that with their legs up?
I have to go very fast. Okay. The picture on the right shows you the nose shadow that bothers me. You have to be kind of careful. That's why, sometimes I wish I had a better way to do a broad light source. That's probably without a diffuser on the right.
Any problems with the diffuser and your contrast with the light?
No, almost all these you see are with the diffuser.
What are you using?
It's just an 18-inch.
No, I mean on the camera. Are you using the diffuser on the camera?
I don't think so.
So it's just a raw
Yeah.
raw
Most of
negative
these,
then.
some of these aren't even vignetted. You do that, didn't you? Just opens up the eyes a little bit. A little practice you can do with never changing the background. You just pop a little in their face, and okay, the one on the right is overdone, in my opinion. The background's too dark. It looks too flashy. It's too artificial. The eyes are just too distinct.
Oh,
we took that one out of
You almost blew your credibility on that.
We're in good shape. It's only 9:30.
Time for the joke?
Huh?
Time for the joke?
You're a pretty friendly crowd. Can I try one?
Well, I thought when you had Don and I up there, that was your joke.
You heard they fired Danny Nee yesterday.
That's right.
No, we didn't have.
You didn't hear that?
No.
They hired a Chinaman to run the team. His name is Winsome Soon. That's all you get. That's all you get.
Nice program.
I know professional photographers who have solved their lighting problems outside by using on-camera flash. Would anybody here be caught dead with an on-camera flash? I know people who do it. I guess I shouldn't criticize, but I probably will. I think it's very, very amateurish. And what's the difference besides the size of our negative and maybe the posing? We walk out there with a flash on camera. I studied at Winona. Paid good money to hear an instructor. And he was good on his indoor, but for his outdoor, flash on camera, 255, 6, they don't know the difference. Come on. Sorry. But aren't we professional? I took issue with him, and he didn't like me by the time Friday came.
Did you get,
I don't get that
what kind
award.
of grade did you get on the course?
He bought me a book as a going away present. Let's see.
From the economy?
No.
Class wasn't even over.
Okay, I don't work for this company, but I'll tell you what I like about this system. And I spent money on it, so I had to use it, I guess, basically. I tried a couple Divitars just to see if it would work, and it did. That's the day the umbrellas blew over. So I bought a Lumidyne. And the benefits of using one of these are, it's lightweight, it's rugged, it has a very accurate guide number. There's a chart. Yeah. I used to have a chart. Oh, there it is. There's a chart, and it is accurate. When it says 5.6, it's 5.6. If it says 11, it's 11. You can believe it. And I've got 3 of these now. They're all just, they're right as rain. The batteries are very small and lightweight, and they're rechargeable, and they last for several years. And it has different powers you can use. They're all exactly one stop apart. So I lose one stop of light with my diffuser. So if I say down a diffuser, she goes bing, pops it up one or I can do it. It's very, very simple. When you start calculating these exposures in your head, it can get really wild. And then on top of all that, if you happen to have a Harrison and Harrison in your pocket, black dot, and you put that in, that takes a stop away. Well, you take that away from the fill light or the main light. Very, very confusing. So I need it as simple as I possibly can. When I wrote this program, there were 11 pages. I couldn't get 11 on my little notepad. Within seconds, it can go to bare bulb. It's versatile, that's right, it's versatile. Go to bare bulb, or reflector, or umbrella if you got one in your pocket. You can stick an umbrella in your pocket. And, or diffuser. Diffuser you can roll up and do like this, and you've got a diffuser. So there's four things you can use right away. It's not that expensive. It's portable. It's battery operated. Some of those I said.
Modeling light.
It's got this head has a modeling light, which doesn't do much good outside. But I use this in my studio as my hair light or an accent light, so it doubles for studio light. If you're using it at a wedding and want to do a silhouette type thing, it's off the stand like that. And, it has system capability. There are 3 or 4 batteries you can get for it that are different sizes and so forth. And it's just good as gold. There may be other brands that are just as good, and that's fine. It cost me $500 for a new one. The second 2 I bought were both used. So for $500 in a Radio Slave, I think I found a pot of gold personally. It got me excited about my photography. It found new areas that I could work in, like sunlight. I love working with the full sun on the back of the head. We do that in the studio. We use a hair light and a backlight to light up their hair. Why can't we do the same thing outside? Right?
Mike, you mentioned something about the Vivitar and using an umbrella, but did you ever use the Vivitar with the same technique, or just put the, I wonder how that works?
The Vivitar doesn't have the power this has.
Okay.
With this little pack, that's the other thing. It's powerful. This is up to, this has 200 watt seconds. And I suppose I look at the chart, but 200 watt seconds where you're standing, I can shoot it.
And the Vivitar would be, what is it?
You need a couple of Vivitars strapped together really to get about the same
What
thing.
is it, what thing?
100, around 100.
You need about, you feel 200.
Well, this has a power booster that can go up to 400, and I haven't carried it because it's heavy, but I may try some of that this year. On those long throws where I have to reach into the girls like to stand in the river, full-length scenic shots, and I like to pop them out of that a little bit. So 200 is quite enough on stuff. I've had Donna, Donna's my assistant. She walked in the river with this thing. Take off her shoes and walk in the river. And if she falls over, it's not gonna hurt anything. So it's this, but she won't get wet. Try that with an AC strobe. You go through assistance very quickly.
Not to mention the extension of the extension cord. Run back to town.
4 rails extension cord.
Raider, you better hope the guy you never finds is where to plug it in.
One advantage of being in Woodford is Marathon Press is there. And my friend Linda Barn works at the front desk, and I can go over and say, Linda, can I see some of the recent brochures you printed? I want some ideas for my next brochure. I only did it once. But I got a lot of them. And a lot of the outdoor pictures I found that looked like they were done in a mini park or something set up behind the photographer's studio. Beautiful backgrounds, nice directional light. They just didn't have, they wouldn't let them in the studio that way. So I think there's some merit to working a little bit harder sometimes to get a little bit separated from the competition.
Like, is your same battery like the modeling light?
Yeah, but the modeling light takes all the power. The same battery will give you 200 or 300 flashes or 30 minutes of modeling light. Either one. But you don't need a modeling light. Al Worthman, you can do a 45-degree perfect Rembrandt on Dennis without a modeling light right now, couldn't you? Right, standing here and look. We all could.
On Dennis's face?
Maybe not on Dennis.
Maybe not on Dennis. Okay. I'm at the end of my list.
Are you going to cover your formula for
Good, that's what I didn't get written down. The complicated thing is I can't give you a simplified formula because sometimes I use it as a main light, and sometimes I use it as a fill light. And what we ought to do is back up about just 3 or 4 slides and just see if we can figure out, we got time to do that, I think, and which one I used it for, because it makes a big difference. If you use it for a main light, you expose for this. And the sun can be your backlight, the sun can be your side accent light, just like in the studio. In the studio, I like to use a one-stop difference between what my main reads and what my fill reads. So if I'm working in an open shade atmosphere, that's my fill light. It's non-specular, it's non-directional, it's a basic light, light level. That is my fill light. So I want this, if this is my main, if I'm adding that one layer of light that we would in the studio, then I want this one stop higher than what my fill light is. That make sense?
How about metering? You ever do that much of that?
It's a complicated thing to explain and to try to tell someone else how you meter it. But you go home for 30 minutes and close your eyes. And just imagine, it took me a long time to kind of sink this in, that my fill light is already out at the river. I'm just bringing my main light for the most part. It's already there. So what I have to do is to meter my fill light, which is existing light, couple that with my shutter speed, and then add one layer of main light on top of that. If, in fact, that's how I'm using this, that's how I use it most of the time. Most of the time it's main light. If I'm working in direct sunlight where the sun is a full front, like the shots with the sunglasses.
Can you do that again?
Okay, then I use it for a fill light because I don't like the 9,000:1 ratio you get. Okay, so then I use it for just a fill light. Make sense?
And then how do you go to that?
For the main light.
The sun is a main light, and then this is one stop left.
It takes a little bit of experimentation. Your taste may be different than my taste. And to be honest, I still bracket a little bit sometimes if I'm unsure. But I'll take one at medium power and one at full power and see what it does. But I can do a picture of a senior full lit with the sun, with his car, at noon. And I can fill in the shadows enough that it's a very, very nice sellable print. And the camera might be back 40 feet, but I can, bring this in until it just doesn't show, put it on high power, and it'll be FA. So often you're shooting at a very high shutter speed, too. 400, 250, if you're working with the sun. So vignetters, you often wonder why I didn't use very much vignetting. Some of those, you're shooting at F11 or F8 outside. It's very dangerous. So it'll change the thinking of some of your systems if you start to do that. And I tell you what, it's great with a family. The way those eyes pop out on the singles, I should have watched the family ones. Do that with 12 people, and then it's real neat. They can just pop right out.
You're in family with your lighting system. Where do you aim your light? And where is the position to camera?
To the camera?
How close to the camera, and about what angle do you?
I don't know that I have a particular formula, Denny, that I do every time. It would depend on the angle of the faces a little bit, how long the noses were. I try to do basically a Rembrandt or less, or more open, if you get what I mean.
No, say if you're photographing that screen, that's your whole family group. Where do you aim your light at? Do you have your light by the camera? Do you have your light aiming at the far corner?
I probably have it about a 20 to 30 degree off camera, aimed at the middle of the group. I don't use a diffuser with families because it just doesn't have that much power. If I have to have this 15 feet away most of the time. You have to put up with a little bit of neck shadows and so forth if you're going to go to this. It won't solve all. It'll create a couple problems. It solves 8 or 10 and it creates 2 or 3 problems. But so there's a little bit of a trade-off.
15 foot away, what would your f-stop be?
100 speed.
At 160.
15 feet is 8.
That's a 200-watt second?
Or 11 or 16. That's low, medium, and high. So it's pretty
High
powerful.
would be 60.
High power would be 16,
Okay.
200-watt seconds. So if you're shooting wide open, you can really have it back quite a ways. Anybody else doing anything like this? Denny?
I've got a 2001 with a portable Honda.
Do I have a deal for you? $500.
I'm talking about magazine illustration. They're heavy.
Mike, do you have a shutter speed and an aperture you like to shoot at?
5.6. 5.6 and 8 is where I like to keep. That puts me most times somewhere between a 15th and a 125th if I'm in the shade. Sometimes, get it? I love it.
Thanks, Danny.
Hey, Buster's.
Well, I suppose about a year ago I took a picture of my son on a real easy day out on a duck fly. It was a little handheld 35mm camera with on-camera flash. I got that sucker back, but man, that sucker just jumped off the paper. And just really whetted my appetite for that additive light on a hazy day. It was just absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous background. With light on camera is a little bit flat. And a little bit harsh.
I can almost shoot in the rain. I mean, if I can get under a tree where they're not wet, you can take a day that's very, very, very dark, and then the fill light is still very much the same. The light level is lower. But I can take these kids way back in the trees if I have to, and you've got a basic light level. It might be wide open at an eighth of a second or a fourth. If they can hold still, you can make a portrait of them. With your different powers, with the diffuser, with distance, you can balance this thing. And it's not that hard. There's a chart on the side. You got a meter on your hip. 15 seconds, you got a meter, and you're ready. It takes that long to get them posed and relaxed.
What is your main brand?
Minolta. That's no secret. I mean, you have to have a meter. You have to be able to meter the electronic flash and the ambient, preferably with one machine. I really like it for weddings. You know, I can take this. This often does my altar groups, and unless I got a really big group, and yet can do all my close-up portraits too. How many times do you work in the wintertime at an evening wedding? What do you do for altar poses? You can do flash on camera. You can take lots of lights that are on cords and everything. But when I use an assistant at a wedding, I just point. I keep my distance the same. She knows how far to keep it from the subject. And if I'm working fast doing all these love poses up there, I'll just point to the floor. And that's where you put the light. And I'll do my pose and I'll take my picture. And I know where I'm going next, so I pick my background and I point to the floor. If I want it different, I'll just point and choose an umbrella inside, so they just put the light on like that. Pretty slick.
You made one comment earlier I didn't quite understand, that you said that now that we have 400 speed, we don't have yellow pictures.
I found that the 400 speed film balances closer to doesn't show the tungsten warm tone as much as the 100 speed did, in my estimation. You know, Joel's a lab man, I suppose. But I found that it...
Kodak says they're both the same. That's just
Not ever a good article a while back. He said they're different, and I tend to believe that.
Kodak lies a lot, you know.
I'm not so technical. Don't ask me about what I rate my film at. I don't want to do extensive tests.
You're getting you on camera?
Luminize sells a little gel, looks like a coffee can filter thing that sticks on the top of that. Have you ever tried that? You feel it's kind of confusing. It's a little, it looks like the little plastic thing you put on the top of the coffee can.
Oh, this?
Yeah.
Yeah, when I grab this light, I usually use it with that on. There's very little difference with the little plastic needle blocker that goes on the front. Very little difference. Almost no exposure difference. Very little difference in the shadow edge. But that diffuser that we just hold it in front makes a big difference. And
Mike, for another unit, if anybody wants to do any comparison, Norman also has 200 and a 400 now. it's a similar price.
Lumidyne just came out with a 600, and so I might look at that. You know, I don't want to get too heavy because then I'm kind of defeating my purpose of looking At 200, I mean, this can grow. It'll grow quite a ways. So, by using something like this, it may allow you to add some things to your product line you haven't had before. If you don't work in direct sun, if you don't put kids up on rocks or fences or bridges or things, to do the graphic type of illustrated portraiture that seems to be popular now, it can open that. The last thing I've got, I just threw in, I don't say how many because I've been wrong both times. There's several slides of just some other work that I do. I think all of them are seniors. It'll show you some of the other, most of the indoor work that, just to give you a so you might get some ideas. But I don't want to leave this if you have some more questions. Great. I didn't bring prints. We even asked if I brought any black and white. We're doing black and white for seniors. Anybody else doing that here? Not necessarily even the color. We do some of that, but just straight black and white. Is it popular? Everybody like to be in the dark rooms?
Do you print yourself? That's just my next question. Do you print yourself? Or?
Anybody got a print and repeat easel? I had one that I advertised for one a while back. I print wallets 2 at a time. I'm pretty fast. I use an RV and a Hasselblad. I'm still on the fence. All right, we're just going to go through. There's about 12. Here we go.
No real stuff there?
No. Striped fabric I got at down the old market. There's an expensive fabric shop. It has imported fabric. $14 a yard.
Where you got the fork page? Is it painted fork?
On the right? No, Marlight.
What's that?
Marlight. For showers. Anybody use netting?
Wow.
Which one's mine? Which one's Joe?
Which one's slippery?
Which one's slippery when wet? That's a real question. It's all slides. I think you can go home. Thank you.
Michael, I think that was fantastic. Good job.
All right, Steve, get the camera again.
On behalf of PPGO and PPGO, we'd like to work with Motorfy.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for your attention.
Let's see that.
Yeah, there you go. Smile, Joe.
Focus for Christ's sake.
Thank you for coming. See you in Nebraska and May meeting.
I'm selling my notes for $10 a copy.